And so that's what we're doing. We're hoping that the world, again, is filled with these Gandalfs, that will find that will see this spark in us and then give us our break. Call us onto this quest, take us out of our dreary lives, and bring us into this success that we really are edging for, that we're just hoping for. Because the mundane is soul-crushing. Our creative soul fights against it constantly. We know this is not where we're supposed to be. Okay, so, as John said, my name is Bryce Mcnabb. I'm a documentary filmmaker and director of Mcnabb Storytelling. So Mcnabb Storytelling is a video marketing agency, and we specialize in brand storytelling as well as authentic video marketing. So essentially, I believe that an organization's value is best felt rather than heard. Right? Because you can immediately forget what you hear, but a story is something that forms a genuine bond with you. It's something that actually makes a real connection, and it's something that we carry with us. It gives us this lasting impression, and so you're much more likely to remember something that has an emotional charge than just information that's given to you. So that's why I'm a huge story nerd and huge story proponent. And so I want to talk about storytelling tonight. And as I begin talking about storytelling, I feel like it's important to really define what a story is. Because oftentimes you'll have people come up and they'll talk about the story's what's important. It's all about the story. And they just kind of use story like it's a buzzword, right? Like no one ever gives a definition to what a story is, you know? So I want to start with, let's define what a story is, because then it's going to be helpful as we get further into this talk. And if you guys are around tomorrow, I highly invite you to come to my workshop. We're really going to get super nerdy into this, break it down to its basic building blocks. So a story, in its essence, is the chronicle or the account of a character who wants something and then has to endure a series of obstacles in order to get what they want. Okay? So I want to start first with a personal story. So we're new to the area. I've only been here going on about, I think, 3.5 years now. And we used to live in North Carolina. In North Carolina, I co-ran a video company that basically does the same type of work that I do here. And so one day, my business partner and I were invited to lunch by this lady. So she worked for a rival agency, okay? And they were our rivals. We were not their rivals, all right? We were like the small crew trying to edge our way into the market and trying to make a name for ourselves. They were already established getting the glamorous projects and everything. So it was actually kind of cool that we were getting to meet with her. We were thinking like, yeah, we can leverage this to like get insight on the business and figure out how to do this stuff. So we started having lunch with her, and she was about in her mid to late 40s. Okay, that shouldn't matter, all right? I understand that. That's ageism, okay? That shouldn't matter, but it's actually pertinent to the story. So just roll with me here. So, I'm in my late 20s at this point. My business partner is in his mid to late 30s. So this woman is entering into that autumn season of her life, which when all of us enter into that autumn season of our life, we start being reflective. We start thinking back on what we're doing and the work that we're doing, and is what we're doing meaningful? Is it worth it, right? You could call this a midlife crisis, but I don't kind of want to insult her, but we're just going to say it was a midlife crisis. So she was having lunch with us. Whoa, this rolls. There are not brakes on this thing. All right, noted. Okay, so midlife crisis. Okay, there we go. That would have been awesome. All right. I'm going to collect myself, and then we're just going to reset. Okay. She was talking to us because she saw something in the work that we were doing, right? She felt a connection to the videos that we were making, to the films that we were making. She noticed that there was something there with what we were producing that was absent in the work that she was doing day to day. Day to day. And so the lunch ended up basically being her hope that we would bring her along in the work that we were doing, that we would give her a job, that essentially we would give her a break. She was not satisfied with the work that she was doing. She didn't feel any life into it, and so she was looking to us for hope. Hope that we could offer her something more. Hope that we could give her something of deeper meaning, of deeper significance, because she wanted that. And so we had a great lunch, and we all left. That was it. There's not really a conclusion to that story. There's not much of a climax to that thing, because we couldn't give her anything, right? Like, if you remember what I was talking about, like, the story wasn't going too well for our company. We were trying to fight our way into the market. She was already at the company that was dominating, right? We couldn't give her anything, you know? But it was eating at me, and it continues to eat at me today. Like, how this woman, who in our eyes was doing awesome, right, and crushing and working for the best agency in town, was coming to us expecting something from us, seeing something special, and wanting to be a part of that. And I didn't understand it, right? And it didn't make any sense. It was as if she's waiting and hoping that someone's just going to come along the path and look deep into her eyes and realize that she's got that spark, that she's got that special something, just by the virtue of her character, maybe how her voice sounds, or a sparkle in her eye. And that is going to inspire them to be like, you know what? We're going to take a chance with you. We're going to call you to our adventure. How about you come join us? Leave what you're doing and come join us. It's as if she's Frodo waiting for Gandalf to come roll up, right? And call him onto this grand adventure, you know? And in a really dorky, cheesy way, it's like, is she still out there, right? Like, waiting for this Gandalf to show up? You know, like, what happened to her? I don't know. So that's what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is that irony of that expectation. And so the irony, kind of, is the fact that we're at a film festival and this is the talk that I'm giving. So, Ansley, where are you? Don't get nervous. It's going to sound like I hate film festivals. As I keep talking, that is not the truth. Love what you're doing. Love this. Thank you, everybody, for being here, okay? But you can take stuff out of context and be like, Bryce is a jerk. He hates film festivals. No. Listen to everything. We'll wrap it up at the end, okay? Gosh. All right. You got to disarm the arguments before they happen. That's the goal to winning. Okay. No, kidding. All right. So essentially, while we're here, I don't know why I keep putting the cap on that thing. That ain't going to happen again. We have two choices to look at this event, okay? We can look at this event, choice number one, through the desperation of discovery, okay? And I'm not just talking about this event, all film festivals, okay? You can either look at it from the desperation of discovery, okay? Or we can look at it with the expectation of adventure. So in order to start to break this down, we're going to start with the desperation of discovery. In essence, the desperation of discovery is the artist's hope under the weight of criticism. Okay? It's what I call the talent show mentality, right? See, this is what I mean. You can take that out of context. Hang with me. Okay. So the talent show mentality, all right? So technically every single film festival is a talent show, all right? You have to be very vulnerable. As the filmmaker, you have to be extremely vulnerable. You have to put in your hard work and effort into making a film. You got to submit the film, right? The film's got to get measured of it's getting judged whether or not it's going to get accepted. Once it gets accepted, then it gets another round of judgments, right? And then you might get a prize at the end, okay? So that is essentially what the communicated career path for a filmmaker is. Our career path is saturated with this story of these Cinderella stories of Quentin Tarantino, Christopher Nolan, Ari Aster, right? These guys who submitted their film, first short film to a film festival, they get picked up by a distributor or a producer, right? And then they get their break and they go off to have this magical career. And what separates them from you know what it is? That spark of talent. They got it and they were discovered. It's as if we got like these wizards just walking around Earth looking for people with talent all the time, right? That's what they're doing. And so we're constantly under pressure to perform in that sense, and we're constantly trying to chase this, okay? What ends up happening is we start hoping for external validation. We start placing our hopes and our dreams in being selected, right, and being called to this adventure, and we start placing our fulfillment. Our fulfillment starts becoming defined by accolades, right? So, all right, by the way, he said I had 3 accolades. That's just to get y'all to listen to me. Aside from that, they don't really mean much, okay? So I can say that. All right, that is the artistic fantasy. It's this artistic fantasy story we tell ourselves of these Cinderella tales, of these people who by just virtue of this spark that they're born with, this talent, this innate gift that they have, that they're more equipped and they're the best equipped to go off. And so what we do is we start convincing ourselves and tricking ourselves into thinking that that's what we're here to do. We're here to see, do we have that spark? Because I feel like I got that spark, right? Do they see it? Right? And so that's what we're doing. We're hoping that the world, again, is filled with these Gandalfs that will find that will see this spark in us and then give us our break. Call us onto this quest, take us out of our dreary lives, and bring us into this success that we really are edging for, that we're just hoping for. Because the mundane is soul-crushing. Our creative soul fights against it constantly. We know this is not where we're supposed to be. So what starts happening is we get in this habit of placing our hope in Hail Marys. We start putting all this effort and energy into making this film, right? And we just throw it out there. And we hope someone's going to catch it. But what if no one catches it? What does that say about who you are? What does that mean for you? Okay? What did it mean for that lady? When we couldn't catch it, how did that affect her going forward? Why do we think this way? Right? Why is this so ingrained in us? So there's a story called the Monomyth. Okay? Do you guys know about the hero's journey? It was discovered by Joseph Campbell. He wrote this really fascinating book called The Hero of a Thousand Faces. Okay, that was a lie. I've never read A Hero of a Thousand Faces. I Googled it, all right? Highly recommend you do that. The book is like this thick. Okay, so moving on. Essentially, what he noticed is that all cultures across geographic regions, all religions are basically telling this same story, that it all fits the same template. Okay? And that story essentially follows a cyclical pattern. And he was fascinated by this because he believes that stories communicate the meaning of life to us, which I also believe. So the fact that it's cyclical is really important because I believe life is cyclical, that life is based on cycles, right? The sun set a few hours ago, just in the same way it set last night, just in the same way it set the night before, in the same way it set a year ago, 10 years ago, 1,000 years ago. It's going to rise tomorrow morning. You get where I'm going with that? We're at the end of winter, we're going to enter spring. Same way it happened last year. There's seasons that we continuously go through. So we actually continue to live our life out in these cycles. Yeah, there's forward movement, right? But we're cycling through the same things over and over again because we're creatures of habit. And the world itself spins, all right? Just go look at a clock, a real clock, not a digital clock, right? Like look at a real clock. It's shaped in a circle. That's telling you a truth about the world that you live in, okay? So this story basically goes like this. There's a hero from humble means. Maybe they live on a farm. Maybe they're on some desert planet, right? But it's simple, it's boring, it's mundane. They're tired of it. And they know inside of them that they're meant for something more, that there's something greater waiting for them out in that wild world. But for some odd reason, they just can't get up and leave. Something's holding them back. And honestly, part of it is the fact that they don't truly believe in themselves that they can do it. Then one day, off the beaten path, a wizard shows up, a guide, someone who looks deep into them and can see that they have something different than everyone else, that they've got that spark, that inside of them is the ability to be great. And so they give them a magical tool. They give them secret knowledge. They tell them that an adventure awaits them. And they call them on to their adventure. And the hero is like, yes, I told you I had it. I'm about to leave this place, go on that adventure. But it's a bit too real for them. And so they're like, nah, no thanks. Oh, was not ready for it to happen today. Maybe next Wednesday at 12 p.m. would be better. Because it's too real. They've been waiting for this for so long, but when it's finally there, it's like, oh. You know, it's like kind of like when you're like dating, it's like, well, I didn't really want to be dating right now. It's kind of like that, right? And so they call them on the adventure. So they resist the call initially, all right? But then they hit the point of no return. Something happens in their world that forces them on that journey or alerts them to the fact that this is their only opportunity to take this journey. That's important. It's their only chance. It's their one shot to leave. And to pass this up would be to kill their dream. So they take the big breath and they dive off and they leave their home world. And they find new friends, new allies, and they fight a couple monsters, right? And at some odd point in the story, they end up in a cave where they meet their shadow self. They're like anti-self. And really, that's the darkness inside of them that's been holding them back their whole time. And so they have to have this like psychological battle where they overcome the kind of evil that lives within their own heart. And they exit that cave reborn, right? And then they end up like climbing a mountain and fighting a dragon and getting some treasure, splitting it with their friends, giving it to the whole kingdom, and they come back a hero. Return back to their world where they started, but now they're irreversibly changed because now they're powerful. And we flippin' love that story. That story is awesome. Like, if you just think of the biggest franchise in America today, what's the biggest franchise? This is an interactive talk. Biggest franchise. Star Wars? Is that what Star Wars? Star Wars? Exactly. Star Wars is the Monomyth. George Lucas just had that thing open and wrote the whole daggum story. The first three. It's taken over from now. He should have never made the prequels. What was he thinking? All right. But we love that story as Americans. That story is Star Wars. That story is The Lord of the Rings. That's Harry Potter. That's The Hunger Games, on and on and on. The Matrix. It's everywhere. And that's just the fantasy side. This story is it's kind of like inside of nearly every single story that we tell. So there's something very interesting called media theory, okay? And so what media theory basically says is that media creates the culture, which creates media, which creates the culture, which creates media. Basically, our media and our culture are in this really interesting positive feedback loop, okay? You can say that a different way. The stories we tell define how we live our life, which informs the stories we tell, which defines how we live our life, which informs the stories we tell. And something that interests, just to drive this point home a bit more, let's just talk about the psychological implications that happen when we actually watch a story. So there's something that's called a phenomenon that's called narrative transportation theory. All right, well, I guess you would call the phenomenon narrative transportation, the theory of the phenomenon's narrative transportation. You guys don't care. Okay, narrative transportation. When you're reading a book, right, or you're invested in a great film, what starts to happen is you're gonna notice that the world around you starts to blur, and it starts to slowly disappear into nothingness, to where the only thing that actually exists anymore is the story. And what happens is your mind immerses itself and merges itself with the story world. You leave reality behind, and you become one with the story. Your imagination starts filling in all the gaps, okay? And it's like fantastic, right? And so another thing that starts happening at that moment too is called narrative identification. What happens in narrative identification is, on a personal level, your ego, your identity, merges with the hero of the story. You literally become one. This is why when we hear stories and something really terrible happens to the main character, if it's a really well-told story, we're gonna cry with them. That's why we rejoice with them. It's because we feel the pain that they feel, we feel the joy that they feel, because we literally identify with them. We go on this journey with them. We experience the world with them. Excuse me. And when we leave that story world, it seriously hangs with us. It has now become a part of us. It's now become a part of our experience. And it is now part of our identity as a memory. Okay? What that means is that the stories we tell are the foundational basis of not just our cultural worldview, but our own personal identities. It would make sense then that the story that we tell the most has the most significant impact on who we are and how we see life. That means that every single one of us in this room is secretly hoping for a Gandalf to show up. That we're all secretly hoping that someone will look straight inside of us, see that spark, give us that validation, and then call us on that journey with them. To give us our big break. And so what happens is, because that's the hope inside of us, we start making the mistake of putting too much effort into Hail Marys, too much effort into one-shots, because this is our moment, and if we miss our moment, we've missed our call to adventure, and the moment's gone. Okay? But why are these two things tied together? All right, well, let's look at a very interesting variation of the monomyth. It's called the rags to riches story, okay? And if you come tomorrow to the workshop, I'm gonna go more in depth into this story, but essentially this is it. It's the Cinderella story, all right? Cinderella. So we're beyond humble means. We are in oppressive means now. A poor, gentle, sweet girl who used to be the gem in her father's eye has to witness her father die, and then is now under the unjust burden and care of a wicked stepmother. She's now a slave in her own home, forced to a life of basically indentured servitude, where she has to be on her hands and knees every single day scrubbing the floors, and inside of the chimney scrubbing the fireplace. Inside of the fireplace scrubbing the chimney. Flip that. That's why she's called Cinderella. Till one day. But while she's doing this, the only thing that keeps her going, right, is that she gets to leave and step out into cold nights, and she gets to hear the echoes of joyous balls and parties happening in the castle just over the hill. And the fact that she allows herself to dream a little helps her get through each day. Until one day, a wizard appears. A fairy godmother comes to her and looks deep in her eye and sees that spark, knows she's meant for more, and knows that that's what her dream is, to go to the ball. So she outfits her with an entirely new life. She gives her a dress. She turns her pumpkin into a carriage. She turns her mice into horses. And suddenly they know how to trot. And they take her off to the ball, where she gets to meet the prince and dance with him. And there's conditions and all this other stuff that we won't really get into. But there's that one chance of going to the ball. There's that one night that she has that opportunity to do it. So this being discovered is intrinsically tied with a one opportunity and one chance, which means that we're destined to constantly treat these things as throwing up Hail Marys. Because what we start doing is we start putting our hope in a discovery, right? We start believing that there's a wizard that's going to come along and see the greatness inside of me. And that means that logically, if they don't see it, and that is a dangerous spot to be in. The reason why that is such a dangerous spot to be in is because it brings up another very powerful cultural narrative. This is the narrative of the dead dream. This is the narrative of the soul that has died. Personally, I love this character. You see them all the time in sports films. This is the dad, right, who took his team to the state championship, right? The football player who just broke all the records at the state championship, and they won state, and it was awesome, and he was gonna go off to college and go pro till he got injured. And he saw his whole career just destroyed in that one moment. This is often the father of the main character of the sports film, by the way. It's like the father of the quarterback, right? And that's like the source of the conflict of the story. No, Billy, you can't go. Why not, Dad? Because you're dreaming. You can't dream. Dreams are painful. I dreamed once. Look where it got me. You know? And so what we start telling ourselves is that when we lose our one shot, because we have one shot, there's too much to lose. There's too much at stake, right? So the risk for failure is too high. And because the risk for failure is too high, we're better off not dreaming. We're better off not even trying. So we start to tell ourselves that being realistic means don't dream and don't chase it. All right, let me just give you a secret real quick. The reason why storytellers tell you that there's only one shot is because it helps us raise the stakes. It makes it more interesting. It makes it more dramatic. No one's gonna care if there's 50 other tries, right? You have to make it like life and death. Then people are actually gonna pay attention and care. So the truth is that we raise the stakes to make the story interesting, but because this is the story we keep hearing, we keep believing the lie. Because those stories of the one shot and they're done, much more interesting than the truth. The truth is a story of practice, discipline, and continued pursuit. So, let's just review the logical framework here, because if we can look at the logical framework clearly, we can call it out and we're less likely to fall into this trap anymore, okay? Number one, the logical framework. This is the lie that we're telling ourselves. Life is a monomyth and we're the hero from simple, humble means. Number 2, talent is innate, and that it is a spark inside of us waiting to be discovered. Number 3, the world is full of wizards roaming the earth looking for said talent. And number 4, you only have one shot to be discovered. Meaning, ultimately, if you're not discovered, you have no talent, right? That whole framework is a lie. It is a lie we love to tell ourselves, and it is only as true as you believe it is. Okay? Meaning that if you believe you only have one shot, you're only going to try once, because you're going to tell yourself you only had one shot. Why would you try a second time? You missed it. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The irony here is that is a linear framework, which makes absolutely no sense. Let me explain what I mean. What we're doing by saying that if you pursue your dream, you only have one opportunity to make your dream happen is that we are looking at the pursuit of dreams in a linear framework. That you have the start of your pursuit versus your one shot of being discovered or not discovered. It's linear. Yet, we believe that after the pursuit of said dream, we subscribe ourselves then, resign ourselves to a cyclical eternity of the mundane. We ascribe one shot to a dream, eternity to the mundane. And so we think that is realistic thinking, that you only have one shot to achieve your dream. And if you don't do it right, eternity of mundane, boring existence. What's funny is that we know inherently that life is cyclical. We know inherently that you're going to stay in the mundane forever. We don't ascribe a linear life cycle to the mundane. No. It's only to the dream. Why? Because that's fantasy. That's not real life. That doesn't happen to people. That's a one and done type of thing. What I'm here to do is propose a challenge and challenge you, bless you, to move the cycle over. Why only give it to one side? That's not fair. It's not fair to you. It's not fair to your dream. In order to do that, though, we have to change how we think. We have to change our framework. We have to change our identity in a way, which means we have to tell ourselves a different story. Okay? Because you got to remember, life is cyclical, right? I described at the beginning. So that means the opportunity to make the pursuit of your dream cyclical is there. So, we're now going to talk about the new narrative that we start telling ourselves. The new narrative is the expectation of adventure, okay? So remember at the beginning of this talk, I said that there's 2 choices that you can make when you enter in these types of things. One was, hold on, now I have to scroll up because I can't even remember my catchphrases. The desperation of discovery, and the second being the expectation of adventure. Before we tell that story, it's really important that we start to look more deeply at the history of film, okay? So I don't know how many of you are familiar with the actual history of film, where film and theaters themselves started like growing out of, but film came out of vaudeville, which itself came out of the traveling circus, right? And vaudeville was a sort of variety entertainment for the lower classes, right? They cleaned it up, they got them to stop cursing and spitting, and so they were able to raise it up to also the middle class. But it was inexpensive nightly entertainment for people to go to, and it was a variety show. You would have like clowns, jugglers, dancers, singers, magicians, right? And as film started to emerge, and this is like the mid-1800s to early 1900s. As film started to emerge at this time, they started incorporating short films into the vaudeville acts. And the first people to discover and really catch on to the power of film were the magicians, okay? And they would start using films inside of their acts. You guys know Zach King at all? He makes these like trick films. So the interesting thing about Zach King is like what he's doing is similar-ish in a way to what the early magicians and the early filmmakers did. They made trick films. They made it part of their acts, okay? Which is really funny when you think about it, because in essence, a film is kind of like a magic trick that you're playing on the audience. We think we're seeing motion, right? We think we're seeing movement, but we're not seeing movement. We're seeing 24 sequential frames back to back to back to back to back. That creates the illusion of movement, right? We think we're seeing depth, but y'all saw the screen when it was down. That's a two-dimensional plane. Nothing deep from that, right? It's just the illusion of depth that we're seeing. So a film, in its essence, is just a magic trick being played on us. You catching on to where I'm getting at? Magicians, magical people, wizards. The truth is, you're not Harry Potter, you're not Bilbo Baggins, you're not Frodo, you're not Katniss, and you're not Neo. You're Morpheus, you're Haymitch, you're Gandalf. Because in essence, when you're making a film, what you're ultimately trying to do is you're trying to play a trick on the audience. Your aim with this trick is to captivate them, to mesmerize them, to make them spellbound, to allow that process of narrative transportation to take place. You're there to steal their attention and capture their hearts. It's actually kind of funny. I think it was Alfred Hitchcock who said that if he had just a machine that could manipulate people's emotions, he would just use that and not make movies. You know, a movie is something that immerses their emotions and it gives them this emotional experience to go on. You're designing rides for the audience to go on. You're the magician. You're the wizard. We say this. We know this to be true. It's in our vocabulary. It's why we call it movie magic. It's still there. People know it. It's as real as the clock is round. So let's just look at the filmmaker story. Now that we understand the history, let's look at the filmmaker. Because now that we know what our archetype is and who we are as a character, let's look at what our plot arc is. The filmmaker story, the title is How to Make a Film. A crazy creative person is inspired on a whim with a singular image. And for some odd reason, that just puts this spark, this itch that just can't scratch in their mind. They're like, oh, dude, I gotta make a movie. And so what do? They call up their closest co-collaborator, and they start explaining to them, dude, I got this great idea for a film. It's about a guy, they're in a room, and they're saying stuff. And then there's an explosion. It's gonna be awesome. And so then what they do is they start bouncing this idea off of each other, so it becomes this feeling, then it starts to become a concept. But they know they actually can't do this alone. So they have to then go through their contact list. They have to find and recruit their friends who have a special set of skills, or maybe not, maybe they're just a body that can hold a boom pole, but poor sound guys. All right, so they find their friends, right, and they start recruiting them. Depending on who's available that week or weekend or month, right? They're able to recruit people, but as they start to recruit people, they have to share this vision with them, but they kind of have to sell them on the idea. In order to make sure that they join in with it, they have to share their idea with them and give them ownership of it, so that way they're gonna get serious about it and join in on the fun. And they come up with a super complex plan. It starts as a script, moves to a storyboard, which becomes a shot list and a schedule, and it's just this wild thing, right? And they go over the plan together. And then they all meet at the shoot location and they film the film. And then Murphy's Law shows up and ruins everything. And nothing goes according to plan, and they have to improvise, they have to slash shots, they have to start doing one-ers because nothing is working, right? But at the end though, they're able to maintain their confidence, they pull it all together and they film the film. And then they go off and they disappear for like a year to edit it. Sorry, unintended dramatic pause. And then they come back with their film to share the fruits of their labor to delight the audience, so that audience can experience a part of that adventure with them. I don't know about y'all, but that sounds like a heck of a different story than Cinderella. Right? That doesn't sound like the Monomyth. What's that film sound like? What's that story? Sounds to me like a heist film. A filmmaker, the filmmaker plot is a heist film, okay? People who know story know this. You're not Cinderella, you're Danny Ocean. You are Cobb, okay? You're about to go incept somebody. That's your deal. That's who you are. You gotta stop thinking about yourself as this person of lowly means. You're the daggum person that calls people to adventure, okay? See, it's very well known that filmmaker stories is the heist film. The best example of this, and the most in-your-face obvious example of this, is Inception. It's so in your face that they dressed up Leonardo DiCaprio to look like Christopher Nolan, right? Okay, remember the plot I just went through? Let's think about Inception for a second. There's a guy who needs to go steal something. They don't exactly need to steal something. They need to wriggle their way into somebody's dream to plant an idea in their mind. Remember what I told you about storytelling, okay? They need to plant an emotion in their mind. They need to have this person have an emotional experience. So in order to do that, he has to get his co-collaborator, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, right? What happened to him? Why didn't he keep acting after that guy? I was so excited for him to be like Nightwing or something, whatever. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, right? Then they go off and they start recruiting people with special types of skills to fit the specific roles that they need. They get the script writer, which is Ellen Page. They get the actor, which is Tom Hardy, right? They build their team. They make this elaborate plan. They go and they start to pull off the heist. Nothing goes according to plan. They have to improvise. Murphy's Law shows up, who's Ma, right? His dead wife imaginary thing, right? Spoiler alert, sorry, you should have seen Inception, it's been out for years. And then they come out, they win, they spin the top. You know, the top never falls down because it tells you that the dream is still alive and that they're gonna keep going. So that's you. So the new logical framework, now that we start to think about our life not as the Monomyth, not as Cinderella, we have to start thinking of ourselves realistically by stepping into the archetype that we actually are, which is the magician, which is the wizard, right? And taking ownership over our true narrative as a filmmaker, which is that of the mastermind behind the heist film. So this has a very different logical framework. The logical framework is this. Your life is actually a heist film. Number 2, you're the magician recruiting others to go on your adventure. Number 3, talent is developed and then shared with others. And then number 4, your film is just a job along an endless series of jobs that you're going to go on over and over and over again. You don't get one shot, you don't get one chance. You get to do this. So, you don't go to these things looking for a break, right? You're here to invite the audience to go on an adventure with you. You're here to share the fruits of your labor, your realized dream, your magical moment with the audience. Now, that just sounds awesome. That sounds way better than being under the weight of criticism, because now you're bringing a gift. You're bringing an experience. You're bringing the adventure, right? Ultimately, this is why this lady had lunch with us. She knew this. She knew this. We were too stupid to understand it, right? Because we were the filmmakers. We were having this wild adventure, and she wanted to be a part of it. And we selfishly didn't share it with her. Mind you, we didn't have the means to share it with her, which is kind of why we had to move to Georgia. But that's not the point. Point is, we didn't share the adventure with her, right? So again, your role is not to wait for a break. Your role is to pass this adventure on to other people. First, your crew, your co-collaborators, your actors, your audience. All right. So for that, basically, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you to the filmmakers for the films that you're sharing with us. Thank you for inviting us on your adventure with you. And we thank you for your work, and we thank you for your courage, because doing something artistic and then sharing that with other people is a practice in vulnerability. And it takes a strong person to do that. But when I leave you, please don't forget the charge on your life. Don't forget who you are. You're the herald that is calling other people to adventure. You're the one throwing the party. It's the audience that is waiting to be invited in. And when this party is over, go throw another one. And then go through another one. And then go through another one. And then another one. And move the cycle from the mundane over to the dream. And don't ever throw a Hail Mary again. This now becomes a continuous labor of love, an opportunity for you to share love and joy with other people around you all the time. So, as you're here tonight and tomorrow, if you get inspired, immediately open up a notebook, start taking notes. Open up your phone, start taking notes. Call your co-collaborator or elbow them. Start sharing your idea with them. Start working on the next project. Start planning the next party. Because I seriously can't wait for you to invite me to it. All right, thank you.